You're listening to The Western Rookie, a hunting podcast full of tips, tricks, and strategies from seasoned Western hunters. There are plenty of opportunities out there. We just need to learn how to take on the challenges.
Hunting is completely different up there.
I've harvested 26 big game animals.
You can fool their eyes, but you can't fool their nose.
300 yards back to the road turned into 3 miles back the other way.
It's always cool seeing new hunters go and harvest an animal.
I don't know what to expect.
If there's anybody I want in the woods with me, it'll be you.
Welcome back to another Western Rookie podcast brought to you by GOHUNT. I'm your host, Brian Krebs, and today we actually have Dave Barnett from GOHUNT on the call, and we're going to be talking research, hunt planning, all the fun things that go into the next 4 months of a Western hunter's life. So,
busy time of the year.
How's it going, Dave? It's
Excellent,
a
man.
wild time of the year.
It is. It's weird to like just get done with season and have to jump right back into things.
That is a topic. It's a good topic you brought up because it took me 2 seasons to realize like I needed to address that issue with my wife or my girlfriend at the time and then fiance. Like, you know, I hunt a lot. Like the year we met, I had a once in a lifetime tag that I dedicated like all of my free time towards. It was a North Dakota once in a lifetime elk tag. Then the next year I had like 10 tags. I had 10 hunts. She was doing a residency a state away. She worked every other weekend. So I told her, I will not miss a weekend you have off except for our like big 9-day elk hunt. I'll miss a weekend. Right. And so I was like, I made a Gantt chart of like all the tags and the season dates. And then like the weekends I had to like go see her and when I could get in each of these hunts. And that was the one that really did it in because I was hunting like all the time. And so then, you know, by the end of the season, she's kind of burnt out on like talking about hunting. And then I have to go right into like applying for hunts again. And she's just like, no. And so it's like, we got to have this conversation. Otherwise we're going to get to October and you're going to think we're doing one thing. And I'm going to be like, I have a tag. Like I told you this, you know? And so you have to have a plan for that. Like it's a very real thing. Like you can't, you know, do it. Like you have to find a way to have that conversation in January. So you're on the same page for October.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's the trouble. I mean, you got like deadlines spread out over 6 months and, you know, some of them, like if you don't hit that deadline, like that's your point for the year, you're toast. Like if you missed it, you know, so like, yeah, you constantly have to be on top of it.
Yeah, it like Colorado is the one that comes to mind. Like if you don't do your Colorado app, you're not getting a Colorado point. And Colorado is a crucial state to build points in for anyone, you know, especially like, you know, Midwesterners that are traveling to hunts. And if you're not a resident in any state, then you really have to play the point shuffle. Like you got to shuffle your states out because unless you do over the counter every year, you're not going to go to Wyoming elk hunting every year.
Right.
So, yeah. One of my goals in life, like I want to have a nice life, career, you know, hopefully retire early. And then my moonlight career, one of them could easily be dedicated towards like getting every state aligned for applications. I've heard like Steven Ranella talk about like one of his ideas is to like, when he retires, just get every state on the same page when it comes to blaze orange laws. Like, are we wearing hats? Are we not wearing hats? Where are we standing here? You know, for me, it would be like, we're going to do it systematically. It starts on January 1st. You know, Jan 1 to 15 is Arizona. Your results are on the 21st, the 22nd, New Mexico. Your results are, you know, just bam, 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 bam. There's no overlap. We're going to handle all the IT in the back end so your state's website doesn't crash, you know, looking at Idaho. I mean, we're going to do it all. We're going to write in, you know, everyone's going to have your point. You're going to buy your points in August before the hunting season, before you're distracted, before you're out of cell service for the year, right? Like July 1st to August 30th, you can buy your point for any state that does points. Like everything's going to be, you know, that would be a great moonlight career. It would never be possible, but
we've talked about that on our end so much. I mean, like even like down to like harvest stats, like there's so much like difference from state to state to state to state. Like, I mean, we're dealing with stats with, you know, every single season on our site all year long. Like there's some states that are awesome. There's other states that are horrible. It's just like, you know, you just want like kind of an even keel, you know, but to your point, like with the applications, I mean, it's like, you got one state that you're up fronting all of your app and your tag fees, and you're floating them for 6 months while you're trying to like maybe bank on these other hunts that you might draw, but then you got to worry like, can I still return that tag if I do draw it? And like, I mean, it's chaotic.
Oh, it's utter chaos. And so like Idaho, it seems like a great option. Like, oh, Idaho, over the counter, perfect. When we can't draw in any other state, we'll do Idaho. Well, you can't do over the counter group apps. Or like, it's not an app technically, but you can't really do over the counter Idaho in a group. Like if it's like me and my dad wanted to go, like, yeah, sure. We call in, we get our spot in line. Hey Dad, I'm 452, you're 512. So if there's 100 tags left when I get up, you should be good. And we'll pick that unit and go together. You know what I mean? But, add any more people than that and good luck.
Oh, yeah. It's such a horrible, I mean, we get that question all the time. I mean, Idaho's, it's really funny how Idaho literally went from like the back pocket state for everybody. I mean, like last time I hunted the Panhandle zone, which is not a good zone in Idaho. I grew up there, went back there, for old time state type thing. Last time I hunted that, which was in 2019, I bought that tag like in August before I went up there. Now like that Panhandle tag's gone after a couple of days. I mean, it's not a good hunt. But like I'll get guys all the time like, yeah, we got a group of 4 guys. We're looking at Idaho, and I'm like, cross your fingers and forget it. It's not a good system right now, and it's really hard to plan on doing a group hunt there. It's tough. Even from the aspect of just and even from like, we've got a group of 4 guys. 2 of us will go hunt this year. The other 2 will go next year. We'll kind of build some some knowledge there. But like you can't count on getting that tag again. It might be 5 years before you get it again. It's a very weird environment over there right now. Yeah,
Colorado really is your only backup state as of now, which, it sounds like they're changing a lot of how that works. So it might not be a great backup state anymore.
Definitely.
Wait and see what happens.
I'm in the midst of that this year where I have an opening in September, and I don't have like enough points to pull anything anywhere. I have like nothing in the pan right now. So I'm like, that's why I'm like digging into these like back pocket, Colorado OTC, and maybe I can squeak like a turn back tag in Idaho. It's just, it's tough, but I mean, to that extent too, like even like going into the points game, which I'm sure we'll get into this, like opportunity side of things, like there's a lot of hunts that a lot of people overlook that are still there that you can get, just because you don't have, something lined out doesn't mean you have to go OTC. A lot of times, I mean, there's 0 point hunts you can get pretty regularly in a lot of areas too. Yeah, no, if you want to elk hunt and you're not picky on where, like I have elk hunted at least once a year since college, which was 8 years ago. Some years, one year I did twice. Like there's always a way to elk hunt. What gets complicated is, I don't want to go to that state, or I don't want to go to this state, or we have like for us, we have 8 people in our group. Right. So that's hard. Montana, you can only apply in groups of 5. Like who came up with 5? Right? Wyoming is 6. Either way, we're screwed. And so we always have to make sure we have like, okay, well, we'll put him in this group because that guy doesn't have enough points, and we'll put that guy in these 2 in this group, and we should both draw. If not, everyone else is bear hunting, and at least we get to hang out and camp together. But if the goal is to go archery elk hunting, archery bear hunting doesn't really scratch the itch. No, especially in the fall. And that's one thing too. Like, I mean, it's not everybody's first pick, but like cow elk licenses are so readily available everywhere in the West. Like odds of success are really high. It's the same hunt you're getting with bulls to an extent. And then like one like thing we've always kind of pushed real hard around here is like the only way to get good at killing elk is by killing elk. So like in those years where you can't pull a bull tag, like those cow tags, especially, I don't want to blow this up, but like Wyoming reduced price antlerless tags, dirt cheap, and they're really easy to get, and you can go hunt a cow every year. Like you can always have elk meat in your freezer, or opportunities to do so, I should say. But yeah, I mean, that's break down some of the typical like, I need to kill a big buck, I need to kill a big bull, and you start just looking like, I want to fill a tag this year, I want to go do a hunt, experience something new. Like there's a lot of that out there still. Oh, there's so much opportunity, and that's why I like using like filtering 2.0. I probably is the number one tool that I use, and I'm sure you're like, yeah, you and everyone else, but like you can look up all this stuff so easy, like so fast. You can,
I mean, imagine especially you, because you live in this, you know, back end, all the knowledge, all the tools, all the data. Imagine if like tomorrow your boss is like, hey, Dave, we want to do this little like YouTube series where you can't use any of our tools anymore. You have to use like the Game and Fish website Excel sheets to plan your hunts. Like how horrible that would be after like the tools we have today.
Yeah, it'd be brutal. I mean, you know, having some knowledge in some of the things, like some states' draws are, you know, you can get into the draw reports and you can kind of break them down, but I mean, you get into some of them that are complicated. You know, New Mexico or Nevada. You know, New Mexico's considering 3 hunt choices at a time. Nevada's considering 5 hunt choices at a time. Like you can't get in and look at data and be like, oh yeah, I can draw that this year. Like you just can't do that. You know, unless you have really intricate, crazy computers that are doing that for you. You know, there's a lot of variability to it, and that's always been the big stick with GOHUNT. Is just, you know, every state is different, vastly different, and you know, trying to get all that into a place where a hunter can digest it, you know, in single clicks and not have to have this crazy understanding. Is, you know, that's the goal, you know, to break those barriers down.
Yeah, and that the one thing that I also use, I mean, we rarely do 2 apps a year.
Mm-hmm.
So our group of 8, it's 8 now. It started out as 4, and you know, we've had everything in between. But we're using, you know, I've used GOHUNT to plan every single hunt in the West I've ever done.
For sure.
From like day one, when I started archery elk hunt, I'm like, oh, hey, like, how do we pick where to go? And the problem was we couldn't go to Wyoming. Our favorite spot was in Wyoming, and you know, it's back then it was like a 2.5, 3-point draw. So we're like, well, we got to find a new unit. So everyone's like, all right, everyone think of a new spot to hunt. And so then I was like, well, Google. GOHUNT comes up. Oh, and I was listening to Randy Newberg, and obviously I'm like, well, I'll just sign up for Insider. It sounds like I can figure out, you know, and we use that, and we throw out a couple of units, and but ever since then I've used it for every hunt, and we just don't like floating multiple apps. Like I don't really love financing Wyoming Game and Fish for 6 months out of the year. So the change, I don't know what, I would love to have been a fly on the wall in those conversations. Like, now let's make the non-residents apply in January, and we'll do the results in May. The residents can apply 2 days before the results come out, but the non-residents have to be there for 5 months.
Seriously.
And so like we've still hunted Wyoming, but you know, we only really apply when we know we're going to draw with the draw odds. And we're looking at point creep, and we're seeing how much it's jumping each year, and you know, trying to put a little buffer on it. We've been bit once or twice. But typically it's like, are we going to draw or not? Nope. Okay, we'll go to a different state. And this year it was Colorado. We took advantage of one of those 0-point units, like you said, to get away with a little bit of pressure. We forgot all about the bikers and the hikers. Right. We still had a lot of pressure. Yeah. But that's what the tool can do for you. Like if you don't want to be floating, like New Mexico I was going to bring up. Yeah, it doesn't have a point system. It seems like a good idea, but it's also never a guarantee. So you always have to do that app. And if you really are dedicated about going elk hunting, you have to do another one too. And so now you have, I think you front New Mexico's tag to apply.
Yeah, you do.
Is that? Yeah. So you got that $1,250 out there on New Mexico. And if you do Wyoming, you got another $700 out there. It's like you got a $2,000 bill you got to pay. That's not like you're going to have to actually pay that bill before you get that money back if you don't draw. And some people just aren't, like, they're just frankly not in a position where they want to do that. Like, I don't really want $2,000 out of my checking account for a couple months. And so, yeah, it's a lot of float. So it's nice when you can say like, no, we're probably not going to draw, and you can rotate your states. And I would say be very confident you're going to know what the results are going to do. Now,
yeah, definitely.
We've done that a few years, and now we're starting to get on thin ice. Like, well, we might draw, you know, but if we don't, we're going to go to Colorado.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at, man. I've had a pretty good run. I mean, like, I'm usually a guy that, like, I get a handful of points and I'm going to burn them. I just like to go on hunts and, you know, hit different things and that kind of thing. I mean, there's some states that carry points in, you know, so I'm like kind of continually burning points. But yeah, that's where, like, I kind of treat Wyoming in the same route where, like, you know, I'll go for that 75% of the preference tags that are guaranteed, just because like your random odds are generally low. And at that point, you know, kind of my, say 3 to 5 year plan, I want to have a state figured out in my off years that I have a better than, you know, an 8% chance of drawing that tag. And I don't want to rely on that. I apply to Wyoming when I know I can go, or, you know, high degree of confidence I can go. Same as you treat, Colorado or whatever being a true preference. But yeah, it's interesting. Like past few years, I've used up a lot of points, and so I'm sitting in a situation where I'm like, the only points I have are in states that I need 10 more to get anything in, and I'm just like, 1 point here and there type of thing, and it's like balancing. But like it's kind of exciting too, in a way, to be like really focusing in on OTC tags, because those are your bread and butter ones. Those are the ones you can hunt year over year, and if you find a good unit, I've always been a firm believer that even if you're in a not so good unit, if you figure it out, you're going to become a killer in that area. So finding some of those areas and kind of hidden gems, like it's fun on those OTC hunts. I mean, while you're on the hunt, sometimes you want to tear your hair out, but but there's always kind of that opportunity there.
Yeah, no. So if I take out the North Dakota hunt, because that's a fluke, residents only, that's a very special situation, and the elk herd is phenomenal. I think since it's residents only, it doesn't get the national press that like the Gila gets and Arizona get,
Right.
but and like Utah, but those bulls, like there's not as many of them as Utah and Arizona, but they're just as big. Like the number 3 all time was in North Dakota for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but other than that, I have seen the like top 4 biggest bulls I've ever seen were in general units, specifically Montana generals.
Oh yeah. I used to tell guys that all the time.
We've seen 350s.
Oh yeah. 100%. That's the thing. Like you look at a state like Idaho a little bit, but like Montana, Wyoming, like, I mean, your average guy is going to kill, a raghorn, 260-inch 6-point, whatever. But like at any point on a lot of general units in Wyoming and Montana, like a 340 bull comes showing out, and it's just, it's just a normal day for him. Like, I mean, there's just that potential, and like, I'm not a big bull guy. I'm just an elk killing guy. Like I see illegal elk, I'm like, I'm going to kill that thing just because my family loves it, my kids love it. I mean, we love having elk meat. But like you hunt long enough in a state like Montana and Wyoming and put your time in, like there's a legit chance that you can kill a really nice bull in those areas.
Yeah. So I talk a lot on the podcast about point strategies, and we talked a little bit about it too, but I have a short, mid, and long-term point strategy, and I'm not going to claim that I came up with this idea. I stole it from Randy. He talks about it all the time.
Right.
But I kind of view it like Colorado is, and Wyoming now, to be honest, is my mid-point units. Montana, Colorado OTC. If I was solo hunting, Idaho could be my short-term states. And then I got like Arizona and Utah as my long-term states.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why I donate to Utah's, Game and Fish 501c3, because I look at the stats, it's like, woohoo, I went up from 0.4 to 0.5% chance this year.
Yeah, for sure. And it's crazy because like Utah has a pretty generous tag system where 50% are going to your high point holders, 50% are going random, but it's like they're so high profile. I mean, like your crappy limited entry elk units in Utah are incredible. So I mean, like it's all good hunting. You have a lot of apps. I mean, like even if you don't have enough points to draw it, like you can always draw on that random side, but like it's low. I mean, you can't necessarily count on it.
No,
the same
not for a while.
Right. And the same to be said with like Arizona. Like Arizona is probably one of my favorite like application and point systems out there. Just the way that they conduct their draw, where you have 80% of your tags going random. And I'll back that up in saying it's one of my favorites from like a low point standard. So like typically, like most people think of Arizona and you're thinking, giant bulls, giant bucks, that type of thing. But there's a lot of opportunity hunts out there if you're willing to look for it. I mean, in Arizona, I mean, your late archery elk and your late rifle elk, for a non-resident, those are a pretty approachable hunt. In the last, I guess 4 or 5 years now, I've drawn 3 tags in Arizona that normally take 5 or 6 points. I've drawn those on 0. So there's always some opportunities in there. I mean, granted, the last elk tag I had in Arizona, it's a November bow hunt for elk, which is not fun. I mean, well, not fun. It's not easy. It's a grind.
It's good.
But it's an Arizona elk tag in your pocket. So yeah, I think kind of having that understanding of the states you're looking at, but then also like, how do I want to use my points here? If you're building Arizona points, like, do you want to kill a 360 bull, or are you comfortable killing a 260 bull every couple of years or whatever? So I think starting out, like initially kind of getting like, here's what I want out of the state, or here's what I want out of my Western hunts. Like, you see it in Wyoming quite often. You have a guy who's like, yeah, you know, I know you can buy Wyoming points. I have 12 of them. What should I do? And I'm like, you know, it's like, okay, like, what are your aspirations? Like,
I would have went hunting 5 years ago if I were you.
Like, man, you could hunt that general tag 3 or 4 times. Like you might have killed a 315 bull already. You know, had you been out there.
Yeah, I mean, my brother, the last bull he shot was Wyoming archery. Was that the last bull? One of the last bulls he shot was a Wyoming archery bull. It was like 308.
Yeah,
which I think I want to be a part of a culture shift on what a big bull is. I really do. Because it seems like it's not cool if it doesn't start with a 3. And I bet if you threw up a 275 in front of most hunters, they'd be like, oh, that's a 320. You know,
100%.
If elk guys,
100%.
maybe not, but your average whitetail hunter, like a 275, a 280 6x6 is a big bull. Like that, I've shot them. They're big. And you're happy to shoot them. And like a 320, everyone, it seems like that's where the bar is now. Like, I'm not going to shoot him unless he's 320, because 300 used to be big, but then everyone, you know, so you got to up it. I mean, a 320 is massive. Like, almost all elk hunters will never shoot a 320.
No, they won't. Yeah, and I mean, like I grew up in northern Idaho, and a lot of the elk that we had there were almost like more reminiscent of like Roosevelt, like crazy big bodies on them, and like a big bull would go like 270, 280, and a lot of times they're like real short, stubby, dark antlers, like real heavy, just kind of gnarly. So for me, like, I mean, a 260, 270, I mean, a 6-point was like a good bull. That's a big bull, you know, and like now, like, yeah, I mean, a 280-inch 6-point, that's a beautiful bull. That's a gorgeous hero on the wall. You know, it's like, yeah, you look at like 300 is big, you know, and I mean, you start talking, you know, 320, 330, like they're getting real big at that point. Like in Idaho, this year I had an Idaho OTC tag, one of the best zones in the state. And, you know, so I went there, I'm like, okay, you know, like I said, I'm not a points guy. I've never had a good tag. You know, I've had some decent tags. I've never been like, oh man, that's a primo tag. I've never had that. This was probably, even though it was an OTC tag, it was probably one of the best elk tags I've had. You know, so I went in there, I passed on a couple of elk, first time I've ever done that. And again, you know, I'm like, if it's legal, I'm probably going to kill it, you know, type of thing. So like, I'm passing on these, and like, you know, like you're just, you know, kind of hoping for that. But like, you know, that being said, like a 280-inch 6-point come out of me, you know, 10 minutes in the opening day, I would have killed that thing in a heartbeat. Like, I love a bull that looks like that.
Yeah. I want it to be cool to like call 280s big, and people like, yeah, that is huge, you know? And a lot of people, everyone that I talk to that's a serious hunter is on the same page. And I've talked to, like, we had Ryan Carter on the podcast. Like, if there's someone in America that knows more about giant elk than Ryan Carter, like, let me know who it is. And he's like, yeah, dude, 280's a giant. Yeah. And he's like, his job is killing 400s for people.
Right. Oh yeah, I drool over his pictures all the time. It's like, and I think a lot of it, like, you know, I don't want to thump on it too hard, but like, you know, it's like social media. I mean, like it made like big bulls so much more approachable, because like, you know, you're seeing photos of them. But I think like a lot of times, like, you get, you know, these new people coming in, or, you know, new Western hunters, and they're like, man, like, if I don't kill a 300-inch bull, like, it's not even worth posting or talking about. Like, you know, I can't, you know. But it's like, dude, like, killing a spike sometimes, that's a lot of work. You know, like, you got to put in a lot of effort to kill an elk, especially if you're trying to run a bow.
But it's it's social media, but it's all like, it's almost like rear view versus windshield, right?
Yeah.
Like, everyone that I've talked to that's like been there, done that, is all on the same page. Like, I have I would say he's a friend, not super close, but he's done a sheep slam with his bow. Like, this dude is intense. And he's like, dude, a spike with a bow, like an elk with a bow. You shoot a calf with milk on his lips, but you do it with a bow, like, that is a trophy. Like, that is hard.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that dude's done it. That dude's done it. But you get to someone that's never even gone elk hunting, and those are typically the kind of cats that are like, yeah, only a 280, huh?
For sure, definitely. Or they're like, yeah, like, you know, yeah, I only had cows in range. And I'm like, man, I would have pushed you out of the way and shot that cow. You know, but like,
I almost shot a cow the last year.
Right.
I mean, I wanted to. Like, I needed like a couple more yards, and that cow would have been in danger.
Right. Yeah. Me and one of my hunting buddies used to talk about that all the time. Like, I would rather, like, at the end of my life, if I was picturing myself, I would rather have a shop with like 85-point raghorns in there just like a bunch of just little bulls, but like I killed a mess of them versus like 3 bulls that were over 300. Like I want to be that dude that's just like stacked a bunch of elk and just had fun doing it.
I watch Randy's like shop talk videos where he's like talking about how, I don't know, he talks about like, there's some of the funniest episodes he does. Like he'll be just like his 5-alarm chili video from New Mexico. I don't know if you've seen it, but when he went down to New Mexico, had a horrible experience. Ate some chili that was way too hot. And he's telling the story and he's sitting on a cooler, but in the background, I can see all of the raghorns and satellites, and he's got some nice bulls too. And it's just on his rafter, just boom, 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 boom. There's like 24 elk up there. I'm like, I'm not even listening to him anymore. I'm just looking at the rafters like, my gosh, that looks cool.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
no, I agree with you.
Randy's a good example of that. I think like in the past few years, you've definitely seen, I think like the maturation of like Randy's points. Like he's been getting some good tags and going on some really cool hunts the past few years. But like that's a dude that's just like always just been the killer. You know, he just goes out and has a good hunt, shoots a good, you know, a good solid 2.5 plus bull, and
he's got that short, mid, and long term. I mean, like the moose and the caribou hunts that he's been doing these last couple of years. Like he's been working for 30 years on that.
Yeah,
and like he spent, what was it, 23 years building points in Colorado to hunt the Northwest Corner. Like, yeah, if I had a 23-point unit, I'd probably wait until a 370 walks out too. And then I've had that take. I mean, that's how I got connected with Ryan Carter. I was sending him videos. I'm like, hey, I don't know how to score elk as good as you, but when I add this bull up, I get 395. What do you get? And he's like, 395. That's a tote. Like it's a huge bull.
Dang.
And so like I've had those units, and now I'm back to wanting to shoot a nice plump looking calf if he walks out and it's legal, you know?
Right. Heck
so,
yeah. I'm a firm believer, especially if you're kind of that like opportunity type hunter that like, you know, you take what you get, and like, you know, eventually something's going to happen, you know, and like say every blind squirrel gets a nut. One of my hunting buddies back in Montana, his first archery bull is like 356. I mean, it's a pig. I mean, it's huge, you know, but even now, like, you know, cow comes out, he's going to shoot a cow. You know, he's just happy killing elk, you know, and like I said, eventually every once in a while.
I have a buddy in Montana that's got that same exact story. I think his was 355 with a bow, and now he shoots anything just to put elk in the freezer.
Yeah, seriously. I've gotten like pretty stable at killing like that raghorn 5 to like small 6. Like that's kind of my niche that I stick in, you know, but like, yeah, I mean, I was just talking to a buddy here
to be fair, like, well, I was going to say, to be fair, if you do that every year, like you're like, yeah, pretty much every year I shoot a 5-6 point, you know, good bull. Like you're clearly doing something right. So if you spend time in the elk woods, which always helps,
right?
But eventually, like that's not going to be a 5 point that walks out. It's going to be a 7x7. Like you do it enough times, like eventually it's just going to happen to be a giant.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. And that's where, like, yeah, I was talking to a guy here at work the other day. Like, if I killed like 320, 330 bull in my life, I'd go out happy with that. And like, just, you know, a bunch of small guys after that. Like, I'd be totally happy with that. You know, but yeah, that's where like one thing, like, admittedly, like if somebody was to sit you down and was like, all right, Dave, you get to pick like your dream hunt. You know, you get to orchestrate it and everything's going to play out. It's going to be 100% an archery elk hunt for me. Doesn't matter, sheep, moose, anything. It's archery elk. It's going to be my dream hunt. Like since moving down here, I live in southern Utah now. Since moving down here to work for GOHUNT, I've had all these like new states open up to me now. You know, Arizona, Nevada, and Colorado. So like, admittedly, I kind of jumped off the elk train a little bit, and I've been like, you know, hitting coos deer and mule deer and, you know, things that like we didn't have a lot of access to in Idaho and Montana. So like I've kind of gotten away from elk, and it's bitten me real hard again in the past year or so. I'm like, man, I gotta get back into that. You know, here in Utah we have an over-the-counter spike license, which is an incredibly fun time. I mean, you're only shooting spikes, but like bow hunting is a blast. So like that's kind of been like my elk fix for the year. But like I'm like, all right, like I want to get back into bulls. Like, you know, I'm on these spike units. I'm watching 6 points walk by at bow range, and I can't shoot them. You know, he's kind of bite your knuckle and watch it walk by. Type of thing, you know, so like now I'm like getting the bug again. So I'm like really starting to gear back into elk again. So I'm excited to get back after it. You know, but yeah, I mean, with a bow, you know, a 4 point walks out in front of me and screws around too long, I'm probably going to kill it. Like, you know, I'm going to get excited about it. Like, it's a blast.
Yeah, I've had the craziest experience with my elk career. So I've done 8 elk hunts. I'm 2 for 8, 2 for 9, which is pretty decent. I mean, as far as rates go, it's all self-guided. But they've both been with rifles, and they've both been like incredible flukes. Like the one was the North Dakota once in a lifetime. But then when I started building my point plan and I was getting into GOHUNT and I'm looking at all these states and like, okay, well, Utah, obviously that's not a short-term option. So I'll buy points. They seem to be pretty cheap comparatively. You buy the tag, or the hunting license, but then your points are $10. It's like, well, I have like 40 Utah points because they're, once you buy the hunting license for your elk point, you might as well buy the rest of them. And so I buy the Colorado point for the first year. And then I come back the second year. And this was right when Colorado like migrated their entire online platform, like 3-4 years ago. I don't know if you remember that, but so I get in the second year to buy my point and do my app, and it says you have 5 points. And I'm like, how do I have 5 points? Right. And so I like signed out, waited a couple days, signed back in, still had 5 points. And I'm like, well, the application's ending soon, right? You got to do your app in the spring and April. And so, and then my buddy gets engaged. And he's like, hey man, will you be in my wedding? The wedding is on September 19th. And I'm like, oh shit. Yeah, I suppose. And then the elk group at the same time was like, hey, we want to go to Wyoming, but we have 7 people in the group and you can only do an app of 6. So someone's got to go out and like mule deer hunt. And I'm like, all this has happened at the same time. So I'm just like, I look at Colorado, I go to filtering 2.0 and I'm like, all right, what's the next best unit? Like if I don't use these 5 points, what's the next unit? And at that time, there was a huge dead zone in Colorado from like 5 to 12. And by the time you get 12, it's going to be 15, 16 or more. And so I'm like, I feel like I should just burn these 5 points now before they realize their mistake. I can't go, if I'm going to go in the wedding, I can't go with the archery group anyway. And so, it all works out perfect. I'll step out. Those 6 guys can go. I'll go in the wedding, and then I'll do this rifle hunt in Colorado. I ended up shooting a 280 6x7. I mean, it's the exact bull we described. And so I've shot 2 elk, and my average is 315, and I'm still looking for a plump calf with my bow. That's where I'm at with. I'm the most wide range. Like I was passing everything in North Dakota because of the quality of the tag. I got I would say less than once in a lifetime. Like I passed like 100,000 people in the point ladder. Because they gave me 4 extra points. And so that'll never happen again. So now I'm like really weird where it's like I have the lowest bar you can possibly have. It's like 2 centimeters above what the legal requirement is for an animal for the tag is where my bar is. And I'm batting a really good average on my bulls.
For sure. Hell yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. When I look for hunts, I'm looking for, I like when there's the dream of a good animal, right? When that trophy size is like, 160, 170 for a buck, or, it's knocking on 300, 320 for an elk, but you look at that success rate, and that success rate starts with a 2 or a 3 or a 4. That's what really gets me excited. Oh yeah. Because I'm like, all I have to do is work harder than like 2 other people on average, right?
Right. And that's where I think like leaning into like kind of your strengths when you're looking at units and more so like looking at a unit being like, yeah, I think I can effectively hunt this unit, finding the stats that kind of meld into that. Like I consider myself pretty good at being able to go into like, a somewhat pressured unit and find areas that most guys aren't going to hit. And this is just day hunting, not even like backpack hunts. Just look for these kind of little out of the spots. I find a lot of animals that way, and I kill a lot of animals that way. So a lot of times I might look at some of these units that like, the stats are pretty good, but maybe the harvest success is a little bit lower than some of the other ones. Maybe we're talking like 15%, somewhere in there. But I'm like, okay, some of that harvest success is you have to take it with a grain of salt, because you have Joe and Bill that go to the diner and get coffee every morning and then go out and cruise a normal loop and pick up type thing. So you have an asterisk on your harvest success. But if I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, like biology reports showing good elk numbers in here. This has got the exact train types that I like, and it's kind of got everything that I like. I'm getting excited about it. I'm going to go hunt that area. Particularly if it's got these kind of little nasty canyons and stuff that I can get into, that I can get away from people. I mean, shoot, on that last hunt in Idaho that I had, I was just day hunting from the truck, but typically like most of my day hunts, I'm doing 5 to 7 mile loops, trying to hit some harder stuff. I was finding more elk within half a mile of the road than anything else. And this is just looking for spots where, you hop over a ridge or, cross a creek or, something like that. And then you kind of suss these little spots out.
Yeah, I don't have those same strengths. I probably don't have the same mountain legs that like people that live in the mountains have.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like super patient. Like, and that's the whitetail hunter in me. Like, I can sit in a platform in a tree for 12 hours. So it's nothing to glass for like 3 or 4 hours with my legs stretched out, nice little sun hitting me in the back. Right. So, and I'm very adaptable. That's probably one of my, it's like, I'll go in with like 10 plans and burn through the first 4 of them on the first morning and be like, nope, now we're over here. And usually that's what it takes, eventually, unless you keep hunting the same spots over and over and you can really refine your hunt plan. But yeah, those kind of units. I mean, I was very curious. So I looked up the elk unit I had. Imagine having a tag where the trophy potential is 330 plus and the harvest success is 87%.
Yeah. You got to be feeling real good going into that. That's like having a fourth season Colorado mule deer tag. Like, just like that video we just put out with Chris Porter's mule deer hunt. Like, you're gonna see some incredible stuff. It's gonna be a fun time.
Right. Well, that's when I had. That's when I saw the 390, and he got killed by a landowner. I saw 7x7. That was probably 340. I saw a bunch of 6 points in the 3 to 330 range. And then I just, we had a weird weather front. I was trying to find that big 7x8 again. And then we had a cold front come through on like September 8th. And mind you, this tag is like September 6th through December 31st, any weapon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In North Dakota, there's no black timber. There's no predators. There's very little elk hunting. Like, elk behave like they're supposed to. And it's great because they call, they do all kinds of stuff. So I'm using a rifle on September 8th with, in basically broken country. And yeah, we had this cold front, so I just went to a spot, bugled. I had him bugling for an hour. I was working with his cows, took it was like a 400-yard shot. And it just happened to be a giant, like a 354-inch bull. And he's 354, and he's only 34 inches wide.
Oh, man, times, beams. That's awesome.
Yeah, one of his beams was 56 and a half, and the other was 53 and a half.
Good bull.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
It's a great his mass up by his fourths, like right before his fourth start, are like 11.
Oh yeah.
Like he just
heck yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I've never. That's the first time I've ever been around a big elk.
Right. And it's like when you get a bull old enough to get to that type of size, like you walk up on them on the ground, and it's incredible how big they are. That's a lot of animal.
Yeah. Well, the fun part was my dad was in the Badlands. My dad and my mom, they're just four-wheeling around hanging out with me. They weren't hunting with me, but they just wanted to be a part of it because they knew it was special. And they like doing that kind of thing anyway in September. But I shot them in a spot where it's like a dream. It was like a nice downhill gradual slope of like pasture, like, grazed down to nothing for a mile. And then we cut, like a half mile of like gentle hills. Like you would look at that and be like, seriously, dude, that's what you had to pack it out. Like, it's just, it just makes your mouth water how easy it was. But they were able to walk in there with me. So, I shot them, I tagged them, took a couple pictures. Then I went back to the road, waited for them, and then brought them in, and they were able to see it. Like, and then that was the first time my dad had ever seen a big elk on the hoof too. And he's just like,
that's
oh
awesome.
My gosh.
That's you got it when you get.
I was trying to get
those. Go ahead.
I was just going to mention, I was trying to get the tenderloins out after doing the gutless method. I'm like reaching in, how you do that. And he's like, it seems like, I don't know, you're really worth it. Like, we're kind of sore, achy. We've been doing this for 3 hours. Like, is that going to be worth it? I'm like, I think they're going to be worth it, Dad. And I pull out this tenderloin just as he says that. And the tenderloin was 5 pounds. I weighed it at home. It was so big on the kitchen scale. And my dad just like, oh my gosh. Like, he's used to like antelope tenderloins in the gutless method. It was crazy.
Yeah, you gotta appreciate those easy elk pack outs. I mean, I've had a couple I can count, but like normally, like you're killing them in kind of a crap hole, and it's a lot of work to get them out. I oftentimes will kill elk not really thinking about the pack out prior, and then I'm kind of like, oh crap, like here we are type of thing. But like my wife this year shot a spike. Man, I mean, it was literally, we climbed up a ridge, maybe a couple hundred feet elevation. We climbed up a ridge, reined it in about a quarter mile, and she dumped the spike at opening light. And I mean, it was a dream. Split it in half. I packed out one half, came back, grabbed the other half, back out, and it was like an hour and a half pack out, done, dusted. But I mean, you have other ones.
Wow.
I killed one in Wyoming a couple of years ago, pretty deep, and it wasn't a fun pack out at all with camp and half an elk on your back. I mean, it's not fun. Yeah, they're big animals. I think it's important when you're going on elk hunt, particularly if you're going by yourself, but to think about what you're going to do when you kill one, and kind of having a plan in place, because it's a lot of work. I've broken down a lot of elk by myself, and it's not fun. I mean, it's 3 hours of work by yourself. So having kind of a plan in place of how you're going to orchestrate things and lay them out and lay your meat out, it makes that process a lot, I don't want to say more enjoyable, but not as miserable.
Yeah, well, I took on the Colorado hunt. I was in the Leadville area, and up above the tree line, it was a second rifle, and I was a solo. I mean, and I'd never really solo. I was like, I've done a couple weekends, solo hunting. I'm fine, and so I planned this like 9-dayer by myself, and like it mentally wears on you. And I was not prepared for that. I wasn't eating enough. Right. I wasn't drinking enough. Wasn't sleeping great because it snowed, and so I was sleeping in the backseat of my truck instead of the tent and the cot, down out of the mountains. And I glassed some elk. What I was doing was driving out and up into the next unit across the valley, and then I was glassing the first and last light over like 7 miles, but I was seeing the elk up where I could hunt them. And so I found some elk, got up in there, relocated them when I was close, and they're up there, and it was like they were up at like 12.5. And the whole hunt was high. I mean, everything was high. So, I mean, I could drive to 10.5, but, and so I'm walking in, and there's like 12 inches of snow, and I'm post holing, and I do like 2 miles, and I'm like going like 50 feet, and like my legs are cramping, and I'm like running out of gas, and I can physically see the elk with my naked eye. They're like 1.5 miles right over there. The big old herd of 200 of them laying down.
Right.
And I just looked at them, and I'm like, I can't shoot one. Like, if I shoot one up here, I'm never going to get it out. Like, there's no way. I'm by myself. Like, I was thinking of, like, well, I could roll it down this hill. But it's like, yeah, but then it's going to land in this, like, a terrible area where I'm not going to be able to get it out of there. Like, what I'm going to do? Go buy a sled and pull? Like, I was going through all these options. Like, what's the Treboygan or whatever, the two sticks thing? I'm like, none of this is going to work. Yeah, none of this is going to work. And so I just walked away. I'm like, I can't shoot one of those things. I have 4 days left. It's going to take me, 2 months to get this thing out of here by myself, the condition I'm in. And so I went to town. I got a hotel. I got a pizza, drank a bunch of water, ate some food. And then the next day, got on an elk that was like 200 yards off the trail, shot him instead, and had a 300-yard pack out. So, but yeah, I walked away from him because I'm like, exactly the point. I didn't have a good plan of how to get it out of there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's always like kind of that moment of like, should I be responsible with this, or do I go kill it and then figure it out? You always kind of like, it's like that battle.
Yeah.
Like you hit on one thing there that I think is really important, is like when people are planning an out-of-state hunt, there's so much emphasis on, getting like your gear dialed in and getting your e-scouting done and, getting all of that lined out, but like the mental aspect, especially on a solo hunt, can be brutal. I mean, when you're day 4, you've gotten your tail kicked in the whole time, and it's the middle of the day, and the elk aren't talking, and you're just like, what in the hell do I do now? You're just kind of hanging out. Like, that mental aspect of hunting can be the real killer. And I think a lot of times, like when you get, especially on the kind of like a grindy hunt when you're by yourself, like I think the biggest key to success is just getting up and being in the woods. It's not necessarily being in a key spot or being in the primo spot. It's just you getting up every morning, continuing to try and, to keep doing it and keep trying your spots. Like it can be hard to keep your head in it. This year in Idaho, I did 8 days up there by myself. And I mean, it was tough, and I got a good setup. Actually, I built a bed in the back of my truck under my topper. So like I climbed back there with, Netflix downloaded on my iPad at night, watch movies and flicks and that kind of thing. But like, it's tough being by yourself on a hunt and mentally keeping yourself in it if you're not having good encounters every day. That's one thing that like you need to be prepared for. That can ruin a hunt in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and everything follows. Like the mental game, like everything's gonna follow.
100%.
Like your physical condition, and for me, I think it was just not talking to people. Like, I'm a very extroverted person, and to go like 8 days without talking to people is like I was going to Subway just to talk to the person behind the counter making my sandwich.
For sure.
Like,
for sure, yeah.
And it's not the same. It just
no.
there's a city of 50,000 people over there, but it's not the same because I don't have cell phone reception. I'm not talking to my fiance or my family. Like when you're waiting for 20 minutes to get an inReach text back, like.
Brutal.
It's hard. And so I feel very conflicted when I have people be like, hey, I'm doing 14 days in Colorado this year. Like, what's the best stove? And I'm like, can we like back up a few steps here? Like, have you ever hunted elk before? Like, I think you skipped a couple things, like a jet boil. I'd go with a jet boil, but I think we got to talk about some other things as well.
For sure. It's like,
I don't think you're going to make it 14 days, bud.
It's tough because like,
but I don't want to tell them that. Like then you.
Right. I'm a pretty introverted person. Like, I enjoy my solitude, my alone time, but like there is a point on a hunt like that where, you're cooking a mountain house on the tailgate of your truck using your headlamp, and you look out and you can see a town, 20 miles away, and you're like, man, some dude's sitting on his couch with his wife watching TV right now, and I'm trying to message mine on inReach, and you're just like, there is a point where you're just like, shit, like, what am I doing? And it's like, those are those points. Like, I've always found my greatest success and like my greatest memories and accomplishments and achievements when I push through that little bit of a barrier, and then usually it's like, you get a little bit of rejuvenation, like you say. I mean, my favorite is going back to town after being out for a few days and like crushing a pizza, and like you feel so good. And, if you can get through those times and get yourself back out there, a lot of times, like, I think, whether you believe in, divine things or whatever, like that test is there for a reason, and you're going to come out that much stronger after you're done with it.
Right. Yeah. And I think I jumped ahead a few steps. I think it would have been better to do like some 3 and 4 dayers closer to home, and work my way into it instead of jumping into an 8-day alpine, high elevation, late season, like the cold, like it's just simple thing, hot versus cold. When it's hot, I sleep on the toolbox of my truck in the sun when I'm bored. Right. But when it's cold, like it just boom, your mental strength just gets sucked so much faster. Yeah,
for sure.
So I think there's a lot to that for sure. I recommend going with friends. Like if you're new to it, and the demographic, like I think a lot of the listeners are probably like Midwesterners, whitetail hunters that are going out to the West. And I always recommend, like, go with friends, find someone, find anyone. Like, as long as you can get along with them, it's going to be better than going solo.
Oh, definitely.
For your first couple times. Like, when you're getting into it, go with friends. Go antelope hunting with, like, 3 of your comedians. Like, the 3 funniest friends you have, go get antelope tags, and your abs will hurt from laughing.
Oh.
One of them's going to land a cactus, for sure, like, right off the bat. Like,
hunting, finding hunting partners can be tough, particularly like when you start talking like strenuous mountain type hunt, backpack mule deer, elk hunting. Like you learn a lot about a person on a backpack type hunt. But when you got a guy that's funny that you're hunting with, I have a buddy that I hunted in Wyoming with last year, and the amount of jokes that this dude can just come up with off the cuff and like not have to think about it. Like, I mean, it's almost like a little disturbing how many jokes he knows, but like, it's just like, even when it sucks, and you're like, man, cool. We saw 16 forkies this morning, like, it didn't see a mature buck at all. Like, the dude that can keep you laughing. I mean, it keeps you out of those dumps a lot longer, and it just, keeps the whole system running that much smoother. And not to mention the obvious benefits of having somebody with you. You got an elk down on the ground or, whatever, like, it just,
yeah.
Hunting with a person makes people back home feel better about you being out there, and it's, it's a good thing.
Yeah, no, if there's grizzly bears in Colorado, I would not have got the approval to go on that solo hunt for sure.
Right, for sure.
Yeah. So if you had to put together, I don't want to start super simple because I've already covered it, but like if you're going out west for the first time, go rifle antelope or rifle deer hunting. Like that's my advice every single time. And unless you have a group of like elk hunters that have done it, like, yeah, sure, tag along with them if they're going to let you in their group, because elk hunting is an amazing experience in my book. But if you're like starting from scratch, like, hey, I got 2 buddies or 3 buddies and we're going out for the first, like, what hunt should we plan? I'm like, you are not going to be disappointed with an antelope hunt. You're not going to be disappointed with like a front range, broken country deer hunt, rifle, Antelope's a little bit nicer because there's a lot less things that can go wrong. You need less
Right.
gear. Weather's
Laid
usually
back
better.
hunt.
Yeah. Rifle deer, like, yeah, the weather can suck late November. Like, a couple other things you got to be prepared for in that regard. But like, imagine we're kind of getting through that phase. Like, someone's done a couple hunts. Now they're just like starting to get into that point strategy, that point. I call it a game or a maze, but like, what would you kind of say is like, here's some things you might want to think about as you're starting to kind of, we're not taking it year to year anymore. Now we're starting to think, 3 to 5 years at a time. Like, what would you recommend for like finding units? What states do you think would be like great states to start building some momentum in or some points in? How would you approach that?
Yeah,
I'd say like that step 2 in a Western hunter's career.
Yeah. The first thing, and I usually like kind of sit down with this with everybody. I mean, I field a lot of like consultation calls every year, kind of this exact situation. Hey, I've got this many points, I'm ready to burn them. Like, where am I at? The number one thing I like to first identify, outside of like, what weapon type, that type of thing, but is like, what do you want out of this hunt? Again, so kind of like going back to what we were talking about in Arizona, like, do you just want to go to Arizona and experience some different terrain and, have a chance to kill an elk, or are you wanting to go there to kill a 350 plus bull? Because our strategy now is diverging pretty heavily. I myself am a really big fan of like those 3 to 5 point units, because you're kind of a cusp above, most of your people that are just burning tags and hunting often, and you're getting above your OTC tags. So now you're getting in areas that, may have less hunting pressure. They're going to have slightly better trophy potential. You're starting to get a little bit more tangible something out of your points, and then also along with that though, developing kind of a 3 to 5 year plan. Like, I have a rotation right now. Wyoming's kind of been the wild card because it keeps jumping in points, but it used to be to the point where you could count on hunting Wyoming every 3 to 4 years. You could throw in Montana every couple of years on that. And then you just have to fill in your off years with, Idaho OTC or Colorado OTC. If you kind of get that plan going in place, and then pretty quick you can kind of get a revolving door and you can kind of keep doing that. But again, a lot of that's going to depend on how do you want to use your points. So for me personally, like, there's states I know, Utah, Nevada, that I'm going to carry a lot of points in. I'm not going to get a tag unless I have a lot of points, and so I'm continually building points in there. But there's other states, Colorado's a state I'm going to recycle points in often. Montana when I can. I grew up in Montana, so I don't go back to Montana a lot just because I've hunted it a bunch. I'm still experiencing new things. Arizona, I'm not a point chaser in Arizona, man. I'm hitting late rifle, late archery hunts for elk, and I'm not building points for mule deer. I'm going after coos deer every couple of years. So those are states where I kind of got my priorities lined out for that state, and I know that every couple of years I'm going to be able to do a hunt. So there's certain hunts that are kind of like my key hunts that I want to focus on, namely, Wyoming general elk, Montana general elk. Those are kind of the 2 big ones that I really like to focus on. Colorado mule deer in there every once in a while. And then I have kind of my secondary states that I'm going to try to fill the gaps in with those. So I think really, one, deciding on what are your aspirations with maybe each species or each state individually, and then kind of, adding some type of hierarchy if you can to like, what are the states that I really want to do, or what are the hunts that I really want to do, focusing on those, and then having kind of your fill-in states from there. But if you're the guy that wants to build points and go hunt, the biggest animals that you can, at that point, your strategy is quite a bit different. I mean, other than just simply applying and buying points, it's kind of what you're stuck with. But, then you have to start looking at, where are the hunts that I can fill in the meantime. We've used this example a lot around go hunt. Like, I would rather go into a hunt with 15 points knowing that I've killed, 5 cows in the last 15 years, as opposed to going in 15 points and I've never killed an elk in my life. So I
can't imagine a situation that would give me more anxiety than drawing a Gila or a Northwest Colorado tag, and like, I've never shot an elk with my bow.
Right.
Like, I would be so nervous of like, oh my gosh, I have this once in a lifetime opportunity and I'm not prepared.
Right. I've talked about that a lot just here in Utah. I mean, like I said, I grew up in Montana, and I mean, a 270, 280 inch 6-point great bull. If I happened to get lucky and drew a limited entry elk tag down here on the random side of things, like, my worst fear is having like a 320 inch bull at 20 yards on opening morning, like, and being stuck with that, like, the biggest bull I've ever killed in my life by far and large, but not a big bull, by this unit standards. It's like,
Yeah.
You know, so I, you know, having some type of experience to kind of base that off of it, you know, it makes some of those things, you know, more enjoyable. But at the same time, I had kind of a big, like, I don't want to call it an epiphany, but I had like a moment this year where I had a general deer tag here in Utah, and it's one of the better general units in the state, I guess you could say. You know, I mean, it's still, you gotta bust your rear end on this, but potential of like 170 plus buck, definitely there. And I was hunting with my dad, and my dad has a terminal disease. I mean, we're pretty much like every hunting season, we're like, this has got to be the last season. But like, he's a tough old dude. He keeps like hanging on. But I mean, like, it's definitely getting to that point. He's very limited on season
Yeah.
now. I'd not killed a deer with my dad in probably 15 years or so, and he was able to come down on this deer hunt with me. So we go out, and one morning we spot 3 bucks, and they 140, 150 type deer, but one of them was really goofy, really cool looking, and I passed on all 3 of them because I looked at them, I'm like, no, like I had like a 165 type benchmark in my head. I'm like, nope, don't want to kill him. When I get home,
Right.
I'm just like, damn. You know, like, man, I got sucked into score. Those were mature bucks. They were cool. My dad was excited about it. You know, I've never killed a deer in Utah. You know, like there's a lot of boxes there that I could have checked. And of course,
Right.
I never found that buck again. Went back up like before. I've never ever found him. But the last day of that hunt, last half hour of light, a buck came out, and he was out there. It was for the shot I've taken. It wasn't nothing crazy. I just kind of started getting long range a little bit, but we're able to get that buck killed, and he's definitely not my biggest mule deer I've ever killed, but like that buck holds a lot of meaning to me now because like there was a lot involved with that hunt that made it that much more special. You know, and I think like to me now, like a lot of my hunts, like I kind of look at that. Like when I went down to Arizona, I killed a pretty nice coos buck down in Arizona a couple of years ago, and it wasn't a giant, but it was just a really good, solid, mature buck. You know, upper percentage for that unit that I was in. That hunt, I killed him on the morning of day 6 by myself. And like, I learned a lot about myself, my hunting style, and just kind of the mental aspect of things on that hunt. And that hunt I hold in a lot of regard, even though it wasn't my biggest animal, just because I learned a lot on it. You know, I think just going out and doing hunts, there's so much opportunity for kind of that personal growth in that aspect. You know, one other hunt too, I meant to bring up earlier when you were talking, you know, just doing like your first Western hunt. I mean, it's pretty popular now, but like a spring bear hunt is very approachable. Tags are dirt cheap. They're over the counter. You're hunting mountains. You know, it's a lot of the same type of hunting. It's a big glassing game, but spring in mountains actually it's a beautiful time of year. It's a fun time to be out there, you know, and that's another hunt that you can do year after year after year in the same spot and have good odds of success. It's a lot of fun, you know, and you're getting your mountain legs on you. You know, that's one big shocker. I mean, even growing up in the West, like it doesn't fail. Like you'll scout an area and have it all lined out, and then you get there and the mountains are 3 times taller than you anticipated they were going to be, and everything's way steeper. And it's like, yeah, sitting at home, you're like, all right, it's a 1,500 foot elevation gain. I can do that hike, but can you do it 5 days in a row? You know, like there's some of those things that you get out there and like it's a different game when you get in the mountains like that. It'll eat you up.
Yeah, I think you guys should make the maps, the Go Hunt maps, in like, you know, January to July look steeper than they really are. Just make them look scary.
That. Yeah.
And then like come July, make them look like true.
Oh yeah, just like, okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah, we've talked about the features. So like one feature we wanted in maps, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure. Right? We have so much stuff. Our map guys are crazy right now with the amount of features and whatnot they're building out. But like, I've always wanted the ability, you can do it like on Google Earth, is to exaggerate your terrain. So like back in the day, like scouting on Google Earth, I would exaggerate my terrain so it was bigger and steeper than it actually looked, just to try to like not get myself psyched out. You're almost like overpsych yourself. So when you get there, you're like, oh, I can do this. You know, this isn't that bad.
Kind of like wind chill.
Yeah,
like it's 10 degrees, but it's gonna feel like -10. Like
it's gonna be brutal.
Yeah,
it's gonna be brutal.
Yeah, that'd be a cool. Yeah, the exaggerate your terrain feature would be kind of cool because then you could like see like how flat is it.
Right.
Like it's amazing. Nothing in the West is actually flat. Like even flat, like they find at places like there's cuts and like drainages and like antelope hunting. It's a true testament. Like it looks flat. Looks like you could see everything out there, and it's not. Like you walk 100 yards, you're like, oh my gosh, I never saw this buck from there.
Yeah, huge drainage. That's like one thing too. Is like antelope. You know, like antelope is a species that you can effectively road hunt, but there's a lot in those little chunks of BLM that, snake out for a mile or two. There's a lot of canyons, draws, coulees you can't see, and there could be 100 head in there, so a lot of times, like,
Yeah.
you may not see it, but, maybe you have a good stretch of land you should be walking out on.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I'm excited for app season. This is my first application that I'm doing with my wife. She just got done with residency
Heck
this
yeah.
last year, and she picked antelope as her first hunt.
Nice.
I think 100% from watching Randy Newberg's antelope hunt and how much fun they have. So
Oh man,
she's like, "That's the one. That's it." So
fun. That's what my wife and I
Yeah.
have been buying antelope points in Wyoming with, like, the very specific goal of pulling our camper up there with our 2 kids. My daughter's 7. My son will be 4 here in a few months. But, like, doing like a family hunt for antelope, just because, like, again, antelope, like, you can sleep in on antelope. If you spook them, they run over the next ridge and bed down in the open again. So you just make a loop and come back on them, So, like, antelope hunting is very approachable. I mean, it's getting harder, especially with, like, tag cuts in Wyoming. Like, that's kind of gotten a little volatile in the past few years. But, like, still, you look out, like, there's antelope hunts you can do every 5-6 years or whatever, and a good quality hunt. And the nice thing with antelope, like if you're just looking to get a representation of an antelope buck, like, that dude lives on pretty much every unit in most western states. Like, that hunt is pretty easy to do, and your success rates are good. That's a fun hunt for a pretty exotic animal for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I'm pumped for it. I'm hoping we can pick up some doe tags too while we're out there and just get some more freezer meat. The unit that I think we're going to didn't seem to get impacted by the latest winters. Otherwise, I wouldn't be shooting does, but they didn't get any tag cuts, so looks promising. We'll see what happens. I mean, I'm not going to get 4 doe tags, but
yeah,
they're not big animals, so I'd like to.
I tell people that all the
more.
time. Like, if you got to hunt, Montana, Wyoming, whatever, you're heading out west, like, check for doe tags. There ain't one of those tags in those units. Like, especially in Montana, there's so many over-the-counter white-tailed doe tags you can buy. And, they're pretty easy to kill, and you add a little bit more meat to your trip that way. Like, there's a lot of fun you can do outside of just the one tag you have.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much opportunity. We're gonna have to do another episode in the summer about that kind of stuff, like after app season, like how to plan out the hunt and all that stuff too, because I think that's another portion we could spend easily more than 1 hour on. But just like this one's really like how to pick a hunt, how to find a hunt. And we talked about that, and what to look for in a hunt. And then once people get them, hopefully everyone gets something. Hopefully everyone gets a tag in the next 3-4 months here, maybe 6 months. And then we'll talk about, like, all right, you got a tag, now what? Like hunt planning. And because that's almost like half the fun of a Western hunt for me, is like thinking about it all year long.
For sure. That's like me. I mean, like, working on the research side of things, obviously I'm heavily endowed in data and draw odds and, all that kind of stuff. But, like, my favorite time of the year, is like post tag getting, like e-scouting time, like logistics, like that. It is so much fun to get your hunt kind of lined out. Cause then, like, you actually get to be like, I get to hunt this spot, in 2 months, that you're looking at on your computer screen.
Right.
Like, that's my favorite time of the year, is like, your e-scouting. I love e-scouting. I spend hours doing that on the computer. Yeah. It's a good time, and having a good plan before you go out there is always good. Cause I mean, it doesn't fail on most out of state, OTC type hunts, somewhere you got pressure, you're going to go out there with 12 spots marked. And by day 3, they're all going to be off your list all of a sudden. And you're like, crap, what do I do tomorrow now? So, like, there's a lot of strategy kind of on that e-scouting thing too, to make sure all your bases are covered, and get to that point where you can't think of spots to go. Like, just here's the automatic, go check this, go check this, go check this type of thing.
Yeah. I'm very fast moving on, like, the first 2-3 days of a hunt. I will come up with the morning plan that plan A, we're doing that the morning. Half the time you don't even get to hunt that spot. There's like, we pulled up 2 hours before daylight and there's 14 vehicles. It's like, okay. But yeah, hunt a morning spot, check out 2 spots over lunch, find an evening spot, second day, find a third spot, check out 2 more spots over lunch, find an evening spot. And so 2 days, we've looked at 8 different options, and now we got to start, circling back, like, what was the best looking thing that we found so far.
That's my general game plan, particularly with elk. I'm a really active hunter, where I'll do the same thing. I'll blast in a spot in the morning. If I'm not seeing signs, I'm out into another spot the next, that afternoon, and just continually jump until I find them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been fun, man. It's been just over an hour already, so I want to be respectful of your time, and it's great having you here. And I also have to meet my wife at the gym because we got to be there
Nice.
at 4:30.
Heck yeah.
Which is not an hour and a half from now for us.
Right. Heck yeah, man.
Yeah. So, but no, thanks for being here, Dave. Kind of sharing what's the back end and kind of all the things not only that you guys are working on, but how to use the tools that you spend a lot of your time helping promote and build and validate. So it's been great hearing from you, and we got to do this again. I feel like we just barely scratched the surface.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can start getting into just state specifics when it comes to your app strategy, and there's all kinds of things to talk about with each state. Yeah, I'm always down to chat.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here once again, Dave, and thank you for listening, folks.